Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the One Spark Network. My name is Eric Hecker, and I am joined today by our wonderful guest, Ryan Wood. Ryan is a longtime investigator, researcher, and publisher of UFO evidence and the curator of the Majestic Related Document Archive, widely known as Majestic Documents. He has spent decades analyzing government records surrounding the UFO problem, especially UFO crash retrievals, along with a focus on provenance, internal consistency, and historical context. Wood is also a technology entrepreneur and inventor, holding 11 patents with an extensive background in aerospace and advanced energy concepts, bringing an engineering approach to evaluating extraordinary claims. He has authored and contributed to multiple works: Magic Eyes Only, The AI Ufologist, UFOs, Who Knows, and Alien Viruses. He frequently speaks on the intersection of gravity control, artificial intelligence in ufology, document authentication methods, and the historical record of UFO crash retrieval and exploitation efforts. Quite the background, Ryan. Very interesting. You seem to be covering many angles of this disclosure conversation.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Eric. It's great to chat with your audience and the Snippy event. Yeah, I mean, I can credit or blame my father for interest in anomalies early on in my life, as a teenager, and then sort of throughout life. But mostly a big corporate career, and ufology has been my hobby,
Yeah, I
so to
think
speak.
unlike most, you're one of the few that's generationally in the topic.
Right,
Mm.
right, exactly.
Um, I do want to just bring to the attention of the audience that is listening that this interview is pointed because Ryan is going to be speaking with us at the Snippy event this year in 2026 for the first time ever. And I think that's fantastic because he's going to be bringing a wealth of information to the event. But let me just give a quick overview of the event for folks that may be interested because Ryan's going to be there. Snippy is a conference where leading experts converge to present the latest research on high strangeness, metaphysics, ancient civilizations, and astronomy. This event is held outdoors at the rugged and desert swept King Family Orbit near Mosca, Colorado. Conference sessions are held in two large enclosed tents. Camping is encouraged and available for any size trailer, RV, or tent. Hotel options are available just 15 minutes from KFO in Alamosa, Colorado. And those dates for this year's event will be August 13th to 16th. And if folks want to find out more, you can just simply go to www.snippy.space. And hopefully we'll see you guys there and you can chat with me and Ryan because it's going to be an excellent time. But Ryan, you did mention that you're generationally in this conversation that your father has a history in this, and it kind of brings me right to my first question. You grew up in an environment where advanced engineering met edge science. What did a normal dinner table conversation look like with you, your father, Dr. Robert Wood, while he was managing anti-gravity physics research at McDonnell Douglas? I mean, what was this like for you just growing up in it?
Yeah, it was a little bit of curiosity, a little bit of I don't give a shit. You're 15 or 16 and you have a different perspective on life. But no, it was interesting in that I distinctly remember Stanton Friedman coming home to dinner one time, famous ufologist who was working for my father on this Douglas Aircraft Company gravity control research project that was it was Douglas internal or Douglas private money. I mean, it's not like they had ET hardware that they were working on. This was more driven from uh, the process of competitive aerospace, not wanting to be the last people to figure out how gravity works and get beat out by Lockheed or Northrop or whatever. Um, and so he was doing all sorts of experiments from the physics oriented things like, well, how do we change the speed of light? Can we use uh, high magnetic fields or um, counter-rotational magnets, the approaches to the sort of normal physics. And then, but at the same time, interviewing abductees and doing regression hypnosis as well on some of the early claimers of having interface experiences. So that's a little outside the box for being, late 60s. Um, and so that's different. Um, and also his interest in psychic phenomenon, because he early on realized that these were interconnected and that they were uh, they were joined, and that the understanding the nature of UFO propulsion or capability was linked to psi and psychic ability, and its relationship is near to each other, but it's not obvious. There's no credible links in my mind right now, other than ETs have mind to mind communication with uh, interfacers or abductees rather than speaking in words.
It is really interesting to me as well that this, we've yet to, I guess, define, so to say, but observationally, there seems to be something to do with, consciousness, the mind, abductions. There's more to it for sure, at the very
Yeah.
least. I'm not content with most people's definition of things currently, but there's something going on. I'm not sure if you. I'm not sure if my next question you just answered it or not. Potentially you did, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
was there a singular moment, a specific file, or a conversation with your father where you realized you could no longer remain a passive observer to the UFO problem? I'm not sure if it was that Stanton
Sure.
Friedman
Yeah.
moment or
Well,
something different.
no, that's a good question. I would say that you know, um, Dr. Bob, which is what everybody called him, and I, had this initial connection. And in high school, I did an experiment on trying to change the speed of light with an approach that's roughly familiar with what he did officially in this gravity control experiments. But I went on to a sort of a corporate career of, going to college and having my first job at Intel and going to work at Digital Equipment Corporation and a bunch of Silicon Valley startups. And uh, it really wasn't until um, I went to a few UFO conferences in the late 80s, but it really wasn't until 1994, and my dad had just sort of retired, um, that we got the Special Operations Manual, Extraterrestrial Entities, Technology and Recovery, um, and and that was when we spent more time working on authentication and so forth. But ultimately, I kept going to the MUFON conferences and being consistently disappointed with they're not talking about the stuff that's important. I mean, it's crash hardware, it's bodies, it's evidence, it's I don't want to hear about abductions or lights in the sky or video analysis. It's just all hooey, or not hooey, but it's not the juicy stuff. Um, so out of frustration in the early 2000s, this is sort of when I really went all in my mind. Um, I decided, well, I can do a better job than this, and started the UFO crash retrieval conferences, which ran for 7 years, from 2003 to 2008, 9, I think, in Las Vegas. 500 people weekend, uh, like the Stippy conference,
Hmm.
except it's all focused on crash retrievals. And I had experts from all over the various fields, experts in Roswell and Kecksburg and Shag Harbor and all the various, big name crashes, and then less known stuff come and present and provide details. So that's when I think I made a step change in what I was doing from sort of a casual hobbyist working with my dad doing a document authentication to, oh yeah, well, we're going to go run a conference, and which is a big difference in level of work.
Absolutely. I think that perfectly teed me up for my next question, Ryan. Good job.
Okay.
In the early years, when dealing with a topic heavily shrouded in ridicule and stigma, did you have internal hesitation about aligning your career and reputation with ufology?
Um, Not really. I mean, I just sort of ignored it. You know, as let's see, as a sales executive at Digital Equipment Corporation, most people, I mean, I was there for expertise in computers and science and um, application diversity and trying to design our various products and and from startups in energy conservation and so forth, and massively parallel computers and things like that. Um, it, the topic really didn't come up. It was not in a professional way, and I never got any blowback um, from people saying, "Oh, you're a weird UFO guy." Um, my response to that would be, "Well, sir, uh, how informed are you? I mean, how many books on ufology have you read?" And well, I haven't read any. Well, I've never met an informed skeptic, um, right? And so it really wasn't ever a, a sticking point in my career at all. Um, and a couple of times it's actually been the opposite. Um, it's been um, a help. Um, there was one time when one of my board members at Frontline Aerospace, retired Lieutenant General Canan, um, uh, was talking to some people that were investing in my or wanted to invest in my company, and the topic came up, and you know, it was completely turned around into a positive. Um, so I mean, I haven't had any challenges with there.
That's good to hear. It's typically a hurdle for lots of folks. That whole, I guess, the ego issue. Excuse me. Next question for you, Ryan. Kind of crossing the threshold of your youth into this rigor of your efforts. When you and your father took active stewardship of the Majestic Documents Archive, you stepped into a labyrinth. What was the chaotic Wild West state of these leaked documents before you applied rigorous forensic analysis to them?
Yeah. Well, it was pretty wild at times. There was a lot of attacks. This is fake because, but that was always good because then we could go explore why, um, or explore the anachronism, explore the attack. Um, and and the first set of documents, the Eisenhower briefing document, which arrived in 1984, I really wasn't involved in, nor my father much. Stan Friedman was the primary champion and analyst of that particular um, document, and wrote a book, Top Secret Magic, on that, and did a lot of work um, and defense and take a lot of arrows, around that. But it was really 1994 when the Special Operations Manual was leaked from Don Berliner, an Aviation Week and Space reporter, to um, and then ultimately to us, to authenticate. And my father started retyping and creating a complete replica of it, which is in my book, Magic Eyes Only, in the back, um, that people can look at. And then we started to get some attacks. Well, like well, it uses the War Department seal on the front cover, and that was outlawed 3 years ago. Um, but then, sure enough, you can find all sorts of manuals from 1954 with the War Department seal. I found them in the Stanford Government Documents Library. Um, so that attack turned into a point of authenticity. Um, or within the manual, there was discussion of how to create a cover story for this crash retrieval. And well, tell them it's a down satellite. Um, but no, satellites weren't flown in space until 1957. So that was an objection. It's got to be fake because of that. But no, when you actually study the situation, on the front cover of Time magazine in 1953, you have, von Braun talking about artificial satellites. And so it's you we went through lots of these particular drills to find, and I'll show you another um, um, one that's in the annual report of Majestic Documents on majesticdocuments.com. Um, they used in I think 52 or so, or 51, the term retro-virus. And retrovirus, wait a second, retrovirus, that's like, we don't even have Watson and Crick doing DNA yet. I mean, this has got to be fake. There's no such thing as retrovirus. But then when you start to study it, you're right at the cusp of bacteriology and virology, and where the science is going. And sure enough, in the Stanford Medical Dictionary, I could find all sorts of examples of retro-X and retro-Y. And so it was a credible term of art at the time. Um,
I
so
haven't heard the term in a while, but I absolutely, in my youth, recall the term retrovirus being around.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the secret is it was hyphenated, and it was used way back when. I mean, in the 50s. So there's lots of little challenges here and there. Some things, being perfectly honest, you can't do much authentication with. And that's a problem, in that, with the Aquarius documents, for example, that came from Bill Moore, um, you don't have much of a provenance problem. You have a provenance problem, and then there's nothing to check within the document to say, oh yeah, that's correct or that's wrong. And so you're stuck in it's a 50-50 sort of deal. Um, it could be authentic, it could not be authentic. And your goal is really to push the needle of authenticity one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very important. And again, you teed up to the next question really well. This one's actually really important to me because I'm not sure if you know, but I'm in the whistleblower faction as well, trying to get the truth out there, getting people to pay attention to facts over fiction. There's a lot of unsubstantiated speculation out there. And, I often try to emphasize to folks that we need to, prioritize stuff a little bit. But your work already heavily emphasizes provenance, internal consistency, and historical context. Can you walk us through your forensic triage when a new supposedly classified document lands on your desk? What do you do? How do you put in effort to make sure that the information that you are, passing through your hands to the public is worthy of their consideration, and that you don't get yourself caught in what I've seen, and I'm sure you've probably seen, is that there are folks out there trying to seed some shenanigans into the info.
Right. Yeah. Well, how you approach it, um, I mean, is a different approach for crash retrievals in the ground, or alleged stories or events like that, than it is for documents. And in the document case, I created a framework which um, we use, and we look at certainly the provenance, which is what the FBI asked. Well, where did you get it? Um, and then that's often muddy or murky or challenging. So then you can't really do much there. Um, you can hire remote viewers to try to figure out, well, who leaked it, which is certainly something we've done in some cases. Um, you also can look whether, well, is it original paper and ink? In many cases, we have original paper and ink. Um, this top secret magic, the Bowen manuscript, uh, an encyclopedia of flying saucers by Vernon Bowen, um, which is on Amazon, which is all original, leaked from Fort Meade, or actually mailed from Fort Meade's Freedom Information Act office. So in some cases you have originals, and so you can do um, pen and ink forensics to try to determine whose handwriting it is, and you look at use question document examiners to analyze the handwriting slants and so forth. Um, and then in other cases where you don't have that, I think of the Einstein-Oppenheimer sort of 5-page think piece memo about, uh, why did they come here? What happens if they want to settle here? Um, what does the law say about this? Um, it's a very well written document signed by Einstein and Oppenheimer. And so the first question we had was, well, did Einstein write it or Oppenheimer write it? Or did Tim Cooper, where we got it from, write it? And so you end up using exemplars of handwriting, or not handwriting, but speeches, words, you know, 20, 30 pages of Oppenheimer's writing in 1947, and Einstein's writing in 1947, and Tim Cooper's, he wrote a book, 300 pages on white sands that we used. And we handed it all off to Carol Chatsky, who is a forensic linguistics expert. Shows up in court, charges you $500 an hour, swears on the Bible saying this is my best analysis. And we had her go through her process of analyzing the sentence structure, the sentence length, the adverbial clause usage, the comma usage, the misspelling usage, just all the little fingerprinting nits to identify a particular person's writing. And, after paying the bill, the conclusion was Einstein wrote it, with a high degree of probability. And so that's another example of authentication process that goes on. And then you look, as we mentioned earlier in the Special Operations Manual, for anachronisms, things that are out of place. Another one around what's called entomology or word usage. In the Special Operations Manual of 1954, they had screwdriver as 2 words. The mechanical screwdriver. But in the modern context today, popularized by the cocktail, it's all 1 word. And so the fact that the document used it in 2 words is more indicative of a hallmark of authenticity rather than fakery. Or then another approach that we used was we took that particular manual, which is the most damning and powerful manual of the Majestic document set, because it's the clearest one. Where do you ship the bodies? Where do you ship the power plants? Where do you ship the weapons? What do you do with live aliens? How do you cover it all up? I mean, it's all there in a how-to manual. So we were fast. This is typeset manual. So we went to Washington, D.C. and found a recently retired government printing office employee who wrote the government printing style manual. So this is a big, thick book all about how you create and format documents. And we met with him at his house. We showed him the document, had him look through it all, and asked him, "Well, what do you think?" And he said, "Well, by the title, I think it would be fake. But after looking at it, I would say that the fact that the Z in synchronizer, um, which is a word used in the document, is slightly raised off the line. Uh, it's clearly printed on a hot lead printing press. Um, um, and furthermore, I think it has the hallmarks of CIA style manual subtleties, the capitalizations of federal and a few other little, he rattled off a bunch of little things. So he could actually tell the difference between what was a CIA oriented hot lead printing press approach and a White House one.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like you had a real wizard there to look at stuff. That's what he did for a living.
I think this is great. The angle that you went. I'm a tradesman, and I've often said to folks like you don't realize what the blue collar folks know. The ones that are the ones that are doing the work. There's a
Yeah,
lot of details there. It's an amazing avenue that you went to. It's brilliant, and
yeah,
it makes perfect sense.
right,
The guys slinging the tools know more than people think.
right. Yeah, I agree. That's good comment, Eric. Um, and so that's another example of deep authentication process. Um, but it boils down to content, anachronisms, provenance, and each of these sort of have weighting factors um, uh, within them, and so you can get a pretty complicated score or matrix for how authentic a document is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always a means, and I think people need to put more effort in. I think there's a lot of lazy researchers out there that are happy to just it's almost just like scuttlebutt going on, or water cooler talk. They hear something, they move it around, and it's like, did you even do anything with this? Like, did you look into it at all?
Right, right. Yeah.
Ryan, in your journey, you've stood on the shoulders of early crash retrieval pioneers. How did the raw data collected by researchers like Leonard Stringfield serve as a guidepost for your own landmark synthesis in your book, Magic Eyes Only?
Yeah, well, I mean, it it was highly helpful. I mean, Leonard Stringfield is sort of the godfather of crash retrievals, and he's he was a brilliant photographic memory, in Air Force intelligence, and he collected a lot of inside knowledge. He's highly trustworthy, um, and I really the cause of the book that I wrote was one of the people at the crash retrieval conferences, I think in 2003 or four, said, "Aren't you going to run out of crashes here? There's only like 5 or 10. I said, "No, no, there's lots." And so I decided that I needed to write the book on that and assemble sort of synopsises or preponderance of the evidence for all these different crashes. And that's what the first edition in 2005 had 74 crashes around the world in Magic Eyes Only. And then the 2024 edition has 104 cases from around the world. Um, and all ranked and rated, you end up doing some research yourself, but I leveraged the efforts of the experts in those particular crash events, and boiled down Don Schmidt's book and Friedman's books, etc., from hundreds of pages to 6, with footnotes and guideposts and sort of a a snapshot of the credibility of it all. And that was why I created that book. And I'm really glad I did, because that was, some 20 years before David Grush showed up in Congress and said it was all real. Um, and and it's been useful for lots of people. And we had those crash retrieval conferences for many years, which was a forum for lots of people to come and talk, from Michael Salla to Nick Redfern to Richard Dolan to Linda Moulton Howe to myself and my father and Stan Gordon, and many of these people that have done. Friedman came. Done a lot of research and a lot of presentations about their crash retrieval research, and launched their careers, or amplified their careers, or amplified it to the field.
My next question, Ryan's similar to a question a few back, but it pointed in a slightly different direction. So, disinformation, I would say, is probably the greatest hazard in our field. How do you distinguish an authentic historic government leak from a highly sophisticated psychological operation meant to lead researchers down a rabbit hole? So similar to the other question, like, yes, it's important to verify this stuff, but I'm sure you've come across, there are factions in this disclosure dilemma that are certainly putting in great effort to muddy the waters. And, when we, like you mentioned before, we have, the CIA with printing presses. And as the gentleman that you had looking at it said, by title, it seems peculiar, but yet by, practical reality, it looks like they could have printed it. And when I heard that, I thought in my brain, that's it's kind of cool, but a double-edged sword, because by, aligning it to a CIA printing press, it could add veracity, or it could be they were making junk to muddy the waters. Right, like it's a reasonable debate at the very least, in my mind's eye.
No, and it's a good one you bring up, Eric. Is that what is the role or logic of psychological warfare operations, or psychological operations within the leaked documents? And before I do the leaked documents, I'll just say, well, maybe I'll start with there. You got to remember that we've got now 7 different sources and some 3,500 pages spanning 20 plus years of time. And so, and the quality of the leaks has ranged from pathetic to stunning. and so, any psychological warfare operations plan, it's dismal failure, because what you want to do is tell somebody the truth, and then slip them a lie and have them believe the lie. And so what you have to step back and say, well, what's the purpose? What's the marketing agenda? What's the goal of the bad guys in this? Is it to target the Russians or the Chinese and say, don't mess with us, we have ET tech and we're going to fry your ass, your nukes are worthless? Is it that? If there was, they would have not have done it in a public way at all. They would have slipped it to their double agents or their people's, it would have been done through the whole spy network approach. Now, is it possible that because we have good stuff and bad stuff, that it's just an effort to muddy the water and sort of manage these leaks and have them low credibility and not have much traction into the mainstream? Because it's all about credibility. Mm-hmm. Why isn't ufology in the front page of the New York Times all the time? It's certainly highly important. And it's not there for probably a variety of reasons. One of it was mentioned in the first annual report, that until we have actual control and diplomatic relations with the press, this is the 50s, uh, that we're vulnerable. And so back then, they recognized early on the importance of developing these um, relationships with the press and the public media to control it, to manipulate, to steer it, um, and maybe sow doubt or reduce their credibility. Um, and, you know, David Grush's testimony before Congress is pretty good. He was in the right place, right time, but it's not anywhere near as good as Bill Clinton or Barack Obama saying, "Yeah, I was briefed in a classified way all about ETs." I mean, that is real showstopper material. And so that's the my sort of comments on psychological warfare and how to what they're doing. Are they still doing it today? Yeah, but they're pretty good at just if you're a highly credible person, you can be discredited.
Oh yeah.
If you got I mean, and they this I think of Jan Harzan, who's the former director of MUFON, accused of child sexual predation, or maybe Stan Romanek, who through automatic writing in a mirror wrote the equations for 0 point gravity manipulation. Um, that's also fairly juicy and seems to be interesting and credible from a
I
man
hadn't
who
heard
doesn't know.
that. That's very juicy and interesting.
Yeah, who doesn't know any physics, but then he's accused of child sexual, pornography on his computer. Um,
Seems to
and
be the go-to CIA effort.
yeah, and there's a lot there's a lot of stuff like that.
Absolutely. Ryan, you organized 7 global UFO crash retrieval symposia between 2003 and 2009. Why was pulling these fiercely independent, often paranoid researchers into one room a critical alliance building phase of your journey?
Yeah, why was it such a critical? It really wasn't. It was just fun.
I like the sounds of that. It just needed to be done because it was fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
It's
it needed to be done because it was fun.
it's
And
funny because that's what we're kind of on the heels of that energy right now. I just went to the Contact in the Desert event in Palm Springs recently,
yeah,
and
uh-huh.
I just tell you, Ryan, there was like this energetic funness going on that a whole bunch of folks are carrying over from this Contact event over to Snippy. We got 20 some odd folks that are coming right from one event to the next. And mostly because we just had a blast, and people are starting to, I guess, rebuild an appreciation for offline activities. What a novel
Right,
concept, being humans again.
right. I agree. I was at Contact, and the energy was great.
You were there
Um,
this year?
oh yeah, I
That
had a
might be
booth.
why. That might be why you're looking familiar to me, because I
Yeah,
thought I must have seen you at Snippy, but your face looked familiar to me. We probably crossed at this year's Contact.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And now last year at Contact, I gave a couple talks, one on gravity and one on the AI ufologist and UFODEX. But yeah, so why I did those crash retrieval conferences was pretty much frustration with MUFON, and it was fun. And I didn't make much money, but I didn't lose money either.
Hmm.
Um, and so a weekend in Vegas with a bunch of people interested in UFOs was often, you know,
Fun.
those were my people.
Hmm.
Uh, so that was fun to be there and do that.
Hmm. Heck yeah, I like the sounds of it. You once presented a UFO lecture to military officers at the Naval Postgraduate School that literally became their final exam. When you interface with active national security apparatuses, do you view them as adversaries guarding the truth or as historical actors trapped by their own classification systems?
Yeah, more the latter. I think historical people trapped. Um, but yeah, the story of that experience, which was really kind of fun, because I I went to the San Francisco uh, it, um, former intelligence officers, um, monthly meeting. You didn't have to be a former intelligence officer to go or to join. You could join as an associate, and so I did that, and and I heard lectures about biological warfare weapons and FBI agent stuff, and um, but this was in the early 90s, and I took a copy of the Special Operations Manual, and we showed it to a couple people, and they said, "Wow, this is really pretty interesting." And then Captain Frank Patho, who was teaching a national security affairs class at um, in Monterey at the Naval Postgraduate School, um, contacted me and said, "Well, Ryan, I'd like you to give a lecture on ufology to these to my class." And I said, "Okay, sure." Um, and they paid me money. I mean, I think I got like $400, which is probably $1,000 now. Um, and went down there, and there was like 10 or 15 people in the room, um, and half of them were European, NATO NATO officers, and this was a course in national security affairs. So their role was really assessing credibility, assessing authenticity, assessing the importance of what the speaker was about. I mean, I didn't really know this when I walked in at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so what I did was I brought a little roller bag full of books,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, I want to give you some orientation on what I'm going to talk about first. Um, and then I whipped out John Mack's book called Abductions, and said, this is a Pulitzer Prize winning author from Harvard. He talks about abductions, and give a little synopsis and put it down on the table, and said, I'm not going to talk about this. And then I did this with like 10 or 15 books. I had this stack up. And then I told them what we're going to talk about is leaked Majestic documents, and went through a bunch of them, and their authenticity and so forth. So that was, and then I gave, the teacher a copy of all the PowerPoint slides, and never really understood what I was there for, why, what the final exam questions were or not. Um, that was done separately.
It's pretty peculiar.
Yeah,
Interesting for sure. But yeah, what was the point of that for them?
yeah.
Ryan, if you had to isolate one historical event, whether it's the 1941 Cape Girardeau crash or the specifics of the Majestic 12 origin, which case forced you to dig the deepest and gave you the most pushback?
Huh. Well, that's a fascinating question. I mean, the Cape Girardeau was one that I investigated personally. I mean, so there's a few that I've done personally investigate. So you end up digging much deeper when you personally are responsible, rather than, um, assembling or synthesizing what other people have done, um, and working with them. Um, so Cape Girardeau is one I spent maybe the most time personally interviewing Charlotte Mann. I mean, the quick story for those who haven't heard it is, 1941, um, Reverend Huffman was picked up by a police officer and driven about 15 minutes outside of Cape Girardeau, Missouri, to provide blessings to 3 dead aliens. Um, and he did that, and of course the military showed up and carted everything away, and sworn everybody to secrecy. And then there's a variety of witnesses, deathbed confessions, and research that I did to flush out more detail. And Paul Blake Smith did a book called Missouri 41 all about that and carried on my research. So that's the one I was probably most involved with. But I think the most important one in history is you got to point to Roswell as being the one that really kicked Truman in the butt to say we got to form the National Security Administration. We got to separate the Army and the Air Force, our Army Air Forces into the Army and the Air Force, and set up the national security apparatus, which all happened in September of 47, after the July of 47 crashes. I mean, they worked all summer on reverse engineering it, and this, Vannevar Bush was very much involved and so forth. And it was that event or events that really pushed our government into a new realm. Although I think, in 41 and in 42 and the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit and stuff during the war and maybe the Magenta crash in 33 and all these other earlier sort of shallow but important crash events were gathered up and stored. But it really wasn't until Roswell happened that the shit hit the fan and people said, oh, we got to really push now.
Yeah, things have certainly transitioned from then till now. Whereas
Yep.
today, we see mainstream media and Congress actively debating UAPs and reverse engineering programs. How does it feel to see the themes you spent decades researching in the shadows suddenly validated on the floor of Congress? All these years of, no, and now all of a sudden in it's almost like there's new people at the podium saying what's been said for decades, and now these people somehow are all of a sudden, they're helping us.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question, Eric. And I mean, it's a little frustrating, but what are they going to do? I mean, it's like, if they asked me to testify before Congress, sure, I'd be happy to do it. But I'm an analyst and a researcher. I mean, I'll just talk about the evidence I've collected, and they really want these firsthand witnesses. And
it's concerning to me because we're getting neither. I would rather have someone like you who's done the work and done the research, right?
Yeah.
Versus someone else who's discussing work and research like yours.
Right.
Pontificating as if they're the guy, and they're being spotlighted and pedestaled. And my concern is that it's not that these topics aren't important, but that these people are more than likely gatekeepers, placeholders of the topic. That's what concerns me, is because I'm not seeing anything new brought to the conversation. I'm just seeing it being discussed in a new way.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been around for a while and have read a lot of books. And I remember way back when there was Adventures Unlimited Press before the internet, right? And you could look in the back of one of their books, and there was a whole catalog.
Right.
Right, of all of the topics, of all of the abnormal, paranormal, you name it. And I'm going to tell you, Ryan, I have yet to see anybody in any of these disclosure circles discussing anything that I didn't first see presented in an Adventures Unlimited Press book decades ago.
Yeah. That's a good observation, Eric.
They're all acting like this is a new conversation, right? The government, right? Oh, now that we realize how important this topic is to you people that we serve, we're going to start looking into it.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on.
Yeah.
Let's not play these games.
Yeah, understanding the nuances of political power is tricky.
Hmm.
Um, I guess I'm not sure where you want me to go with that
Oh, no
question.
worries. It was just my observation of the lay of the land currently is that I feel for all of these people that have done due diligence for years,
Right,
and it falls on deaf ears, and there's counterintelligence operations that are trying to close up leaks for decades.
right.
And now all of a sudden it's like now it's in a way it's almost like they opened the faucet, let the same waters flow, and are pretending that they weren't the ones that had us in a drought forever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they probably they really aren't that concerned. I mean, because I mean, crash retrievals have been around for quite some time, and now they're sort of validated as, oh yeah, it's really true. Uh, but they don't really care. And what they they are the thing that will get you in real trouble fast is, oh, you have pieces of an alien craft. You've got parts or wreckage. You found one. You have a dead alien body. I mean, it's like, you know, the thing they're really protecting is the secrets that they've reverse engineered and primarily or invented on their own. Um, it's gravity control. I mean, that's the thing. That's the most upsetting. Maybe you maybe you got make progress on fusion or 0 point energy production. Um, but gravity and energy production are so destabilizing to the global economic order um, that probably it's bigger than AI or as big as AI. That's the thing it's upsetting the apple cart, and they don't want to do that. They want to keep it small and managed, and it's up to the white world to try to figure out how gravity works again. Um, Even though they figured it out in a classified way, I think long ago, back in the late 50s, early 60s.
Absolutely. My next question I'm curious about because I'm starting to dabble in the AI realm. You
Oh,
recently authored The AI Ufologist, Answering the Big Questions of Ufology.
yeah.
How are you using modern cutting edge tools like artificial intelligence to parse the massive historical archive? And is AI the key that finally unlocks full disclosure?
Um, I don't know about the key, but I'd say it's an important tool. I mean, in the military parlance, it's intelligence dominance. That's what we have to do. We have to have better intelligence, more intelligence than the bad guys, or, well, we won't. But the point is elevating the press and the public discourse with better tools. And in that vein, I created a tool called UFODEX, UFODEX.com. I started this back in 2000, like 8 or 9, when all we had was Google Minis and search boxes. And so I've scanned 1 million pages of UFO books and documents from the National Archives, from FBI files, from magazines, from, now about 850 of the best books in ufology are all searchable online at ufodex.com. You can go there, just type in your question, um, and get a 1,000 word well referenced answer um, to any particular thing. And I use that tool to create the book, The AI Ufologist, which uh, highlights the sort of top 30 questions in ufology that were burning in my mind when I wrote the book or created the book. Um, Starting with, well, what's the agenda? Why are they here?
Mhm.
What the hell do they want? Um, which is what everybody wants to know right up front. Uh, and then it got more, you know, why do they keep it secret? Why won't they tell the truth? Well, what are the technologies they're hiding? What happens to the economy? How is psychic phenomena involved? Or what are the top 10 messages from contactees or abductees about the future of humanity? Dot, dot, dot. I mean, these are the burning questions that were in my mind. And, it's a 100-page book, and it's sort of real crisp, getting to all the key points. It's more like 10 points with a paragraph on each one concerning each question. And so it's on Amazon, it's available. But I used my UFODEX tool to create that, and I continue to add to it. And just recently, 2 weeks ago, I think, I released 27 documents comprising 1,100 pages related all to UFOs and the cover-up directly from the National Archives. I mean, this is my UAP release number 1. And the other 3 UAP releases, or 4 UAP releases of documents, have been just yawns. Now they have some videos and other cool pictures and things like that, but I'm looking at documents.
Yeah, it doesn't really show anything.
Yeah. And so there's a big tranche that I released, and I'm going to work on another tranche. And these are all from, various record groups at the National Archives, which paint a very clear picture of deceit and cover-up and intense interest. And, give you one example. There's the Blount to Evans memo, where it basically says, I want to see this top secret report on the 3 aliens that crashed in Mexico. But the details are too bizarre to understand right now. So this is sort of in a confidential correspondence between Robley Evans at MIT and Colonel Blount at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I mean, it's not a smoking gun, but it's a smoldering gun.
Yeah, it's, I guess, in a way you could say it's evidence, but it's not proof.
Yeah, thank you.
Right? Yeah, it's, it adds up, and these are the things that people need to pay attention to more. There are certainly clues. We're still in the game. We don't have the conclusion, but there's things that we can't dismiss that go in the pile of evidence towards proving.
Right.
Okay. Looking back at the young man who first started looking at anti-gravity files with his dad, what is the core piece of wisdom you want to hand down to the next generation of researchers who inherit the majestic documents?
Core piece of wisdom. Do your homework. Work hard. Make it credible. Honor your intentions. Show integrity. Do the right thing. I mean, those are cliches for life, but they apply here too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's almost a shame that nowadays, when it comes to these things, that you have to make like such a Captain Obvious statement, but it matters. Like, we need to say these things nowadays. It's getting really crazy when it comes. I do think that Alex Jones has coined the phrase "info wars" very appropriately.
Right.
I grew up. I was a Gen X kid, and we had the Cold War. I think this is the info war, straight up.
Yeah,
it absolutely is. But Ryan, thank you for the conversation today, and letting me get to know you and the audience get to know you a little bit better beyond, just the facts that you put out there and the work that you do, but the path that you walked getting there. And I do look forward to seeing you at Snippy, August 13th to 16th. But between now and then, and if people want to follow you further, where should they go to follow your work, Ryan?
Well, I mean, the majesticdocuments.com is it's a great place to start reading the details. I mean, the for the person new to the ufology, I think the AI ufologist is a great orientation, simple book to get. And for those interested in um, the credibility of the topic, we didn't really talk about UFOs. Who knows? Question mark. But that's a book of 185 famous quotations from people, from engineers, scientists, astronauts, presidents, politicians, etc. Some stunning, some um, more casual, but all of it um, highly credible. And that's the thing. It's credibility that's important. So, uh, and I would urge you to all come to Snippy and talk in person and learn from the other experts and be more informed.
Yeah, I do think it's a lot more fun having these conversations in person than in the digital realm. Um, yeah, I mean, we've been effectively divided as a society, unfortunately, but we can resist and fight back.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, Ryan, again, thank you very much for your time today. Um, Everybody, give him a like and a follow. Check out his stuff, buy his books, and come see us at Snippy. Thank you, sir, and have an excellent day. Be well.
All right. Thank you. See you.